And let me explain what happened. When you do a bong hit of marijuana, your lungs are opening up to accommodate 4 to 7 times more oxygen in your lungs than would normally be there. Now, normally that won't even help you because your lungs under normal circumstances can only handle a normal amount of oxygen. You would simply exhale the rest. If I was just doing heavy breathing exercise, it probably only adds about 25% more oxygen to my lungs than it would normally get. But when you do a big bong hit, not only are you taking 4 to 7 times more oxygen into your lungs, but the THC goes in as a vasodilator. THC works in the exact opposite way of nicotine. It makes your veins and arteries larger and more able to deliver lots more blood and oxygen to the affected tissues. So when your lungs are wide open and the THC hits your lungs, it makes them much larger so you can absorb all that extra oxygen you're taking in and deliver it to the affected cells in your lung lining. And additionally, the THC, in addition to opening up so you can take in more oxygen and more blood to affected tissues, actually attacks any tumorous cells, any old cells, any dead cells, any cancer cells on your lungs and shrinks them and destroys them. Cancer isn't just prevented by marijuana. Cannabis will actually attack tumors and shrink them. And we have lots of evidence to show that, many studies that are scientifically peer-reviewed at our website at cannabisculture.com. But once again, please check up, research that. Put cannabis and cancer cure in a Google search engine, and you'll be amazed. So you'll never get Alzheimer's. Why you get cancer to the lungs or respiratory system. And you know what? You won't meet anybody with multiple sclerosis, a spasticity illness, where your electric signals between your cells jumps through the cell lining and makes people spastic. So when a person with MS tries to move their finger, what they end up doing is shaking like this because the signals are going through the cell lining and being confused. Cannabis remarkably controls the sending of signals to the body so that anybody with multiple sclerosis who smokes cannabis will get the control of their limbs and they get control of their eyesight, which they also lose. Anybody in Canada with Crohn's disease would swear by using medical marijuana because a person with Crohn's disease has got a bowel wasting syndrome. And with this bowel wasting syndrome, they have terrible pain when their bowels are being used to go to the bathroom, and it's like having glass in your stomach. It's like going to the bathroom and shedding glass. It's very, very painful. Everybody with Crohn's disease swears by the marvelous effects of cannabis that take away their pain, reduce their nausea, and to line their bowels with some kind of beautiful coating that allows them to pass life with a lot less pain than normal. If you know anybody with anorexia or bulimia, cannabis can cure that problem for them in 3 days. Just smoke a joint and your appetite will be there. If you've got in hospital and you're doing cancer therapy, chemotherapy, that marijuana will allow you to keep the morphine down, will allow you to keep the painkillers down, and all the treatment you're having with chemotherapy will prevent your nausea. If you've got diabetes, and I know a woman going blind who's had her legs amputated, cannabis allows them to deal with the ghostly effects of the after effects of amputation and allows her to take her medicine. She's required to take 60 pills every day and allows her to keep it on. And as I travel this country, this is my 14th city, 14 days, bringing you this message, bringing you my final instructions before I go to a U.S. federal penitentiary for 5 years. I meet people every day who have illnesses affecting the eye, the brain, the body, spasticity, the muscle, their blood, their liver, their pancreas. It's just absolutely amazing. Cannabis is not only never going to kill you, it doesn't harm you, it is the only life-giving substance on earth that can solve diseases, deal with your pain, deal with illnesses, deal with chronic illnesses. You can even wear cannabis. Like I said, I'm wearing hemp pants across this country. I eat cannabis cereals in the morning. It's just the most incredible thing. There's nothing else on earth that you can eat, wear, and cure diseases, and find enlightenment with. And then that is probably the most important reason why many of you here use cannabis. Because it opens up your mind to a whole world of truth. Remember when you first started smoking marijuana? Many of you were probably in grade 8 or grade 9. I was a late bloomer. I didn't start smoking until I was 22 years old. That's 30 years ago now. Right after I read Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, which changed my life, I smoked marijuana, and those are the 2 most pivotal events in my life. For 30 years, I've been on this rampage, this crusade, to end cannabis prohibition, and hopefully to make my contribution to this country in bringing liberty to the people, including myself, including you. Marijuana is the most wonderful thing ever developed. And then what do we, and the marijuana, but here's the thing. I've dealt with its medical, I've dealt with its practical industrial use, and They're remarkable. But the greatest contribution possibly that I'm going to talk about is not those things. It's the great contributions that the pot people have made to the world. William Shakespeare, the greatest writer of the English language, smoked hashish in his pipe. I've talked to the scientists that are in charge of the museum where William Shakespeare smoked the pipe for hours, and they have conclusively tested positive for hashish. William Shakespeare, the greatest writer in the English language, smoked marijuana. Fast forward 500 years, the greatest athlete in the modern era, a man with 16 gold medals, more medals than the Canadian Olympic team won in the whole season. Our whole contingent didn't even win 8 gold medals. Michael Phelps in 2 Olympics has won 16 gold medals, and by the way, 2 extra bronze ones. He probably used those as doilies. Bronze medals don't show anybody that, right? I mean, Michael Phelps. And what is this man's principal weapon of winning 16 gold medals? It's not his arm. It's his lungs. The man's taking bong hits, and he knows what I just told you. That when you do a bong hit, you're delivering more blood and oxygen to the lungs, and that's why Michael Phelps is the greatest Olympic swimmer in the history of modern Olympics. Since 1896, when the Olympic swimming started in Athens, Greece, he has done better, fastest man alive in water. And why? Because his lungs are used to sucking in a lot of oxygen, because that man knows the benefits of THC. But does not stop with the world's greatest athlete smoking pot, or the world's greatest writer smoking pot. How about that iPod in your pocket? Everybody's got an iPod or an iPhone. Steve Jobs developed the Mac computer in 1977 when he was high as a kite on heroin. High as a kite he was. Wouldn't even have an iPhone or an iPod in your pocket if it wasn't for a stoner like Steve Jobs. And you know what? You wouldn't even be using a Microsoft operating system either. Because Bill Gates and Paul Allen were total stoners in the 1970s and came up with the Microsoft operating system while wired to the gills on lots of cannabis. And Paul Allen is still smoking cannabis every day. Man spent $55 million on the Jimi Hendrix Experience, big blown glass guitar going up. That's a stoner spending money for sure. Microsoft operating systems, Mac computers, everybody in the straight world. And I'm not saying, here's my point. I'm going to tell you about so many beautiful things that were done by potheads. Everything you can think of that we take for granted in the modern era was brought to you by a pothead. And so, why are we scorned and despised? Why do 2 million Canadians since those 1960s have criminal records for marijuana? Why are we hunted down like animals everywhere on Earth? 250,000 people in jail right now all across this planet for just cannabis alone. 70,000 people in the United States, about 1,000 in Canada in jail at one time, and the rest of them around the world in jail for cannabis. And yet, William Shakespeare smoked marijuana. Michael Phelps, the greatest athlete modern, smokes marijuana. Paul McCartney just got through performing in Halifax on top of the Ed Sullivan Theatre a few days ago. He's 66 years old, and the guy smokes a big gagger every day. Paul McCartney and the Beatles have 32 songs that indirectly or directly mention marijuana in their songs. One song called Got to Get You Into My Life is all about marijuana. He's got to get more marijuana into his life. Paul McCartney, John Lennon, the greatest songwriting composers of the modern era, smoked lots of weed all the time. And you know what? They were introduced to weed by the greatest poet in modern time on records and recorded music of Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan, the greatest modern poet, folk music, is a pot smoker. Was a pot smoker, still is a pot smoker. Paul McCartney's still pot smoking. And you know what? He looks really great at 66 years of age, keeping him young. He's got a new girlfriend, he's real healthy. You know what, George Harrison? He smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day and he died about 7 years ago of lung cancer. Paul McCartney's still smoking and singing and looks fabulous. Greatest rock and roll hard rock band of all time, Led Zeppelin. All smoked pot. Robert Plant still smokes pot. The earliest known picture of Robert Plant is in 1967. In January, he's at a pot rally. He's got holding up a sign that says legalize marijuana. He was into legalizing marijuana before he even started Led Zeppelin. And the third greatest rock band, depending on who you want to pick, the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, or the Rolling Stones, they still smoke lots of weed. And I'll tell you how I know this, because we happen to be friends with Lizzie Jagger, the daughter of Mick Jagger, and the daughter of Keith Richards, Theodore Richards. And they came into our shop, they hung out with us, and they bought thousands of dollars worth of old marijuana artifacts. And they said, because our dads have a castle each, they said. Mick Jagger has a castle, Keith Richards has a castle, and they let us have one room each in their castle to design totally with weed paraphernalia. So they filled it up with old hookahs, and old pipes, and old prints. They bought a lot of